Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum and welcome you here. We have a busy day. The faster we move this morning, the sooner we'll be able to go home tonight, because this meeting will go into recess and we will reconvene at 6. With that, we would first like to welcome Representative Winkler, who has House File 605, and the chair will move House File 605 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus finance bill.
Madam Chair.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to amend the motion and send it back to the House Environment Policy Committee. I understand they're meeting tonight, and ask for a roll call.
That motion has been made and a roll call has been requested. The clerk will take the roll. The chair votes no.
Falk?
No.
McNamara?
Yes.
Anderson? Absent. Benson?
No.
Bly?
No.
Clark? Absent. Dill? Absent. Erickson?
No.
Fabian?
Yes.
Freiberg? Hackbarth? Excused. Hamilton?
Yes.
Hanson?
No.
Khan? Keel? Poppy?
No.
Torkelson?
Yes.
Ward?
No.
Slow.
There being 8 nays and 4 ayes, that does not pass. Welcome, Representative Winkler. I have moved that House File 605 be laid over for possible inclusion, and we would like to hear from you.
And Madam Chair, there is an amendment that I'd like to.
Okay, we have the amendment, and it's the DE3, and I'll move the DE3 to get it in the shape the author would like. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No.
No.
The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, House File 605 is also known as the Toxic Free Kids Act. The DE amendment, which you just adopted, significantly changes the bill from the version that passed through the Commerce Committee and the Health Policy Committee last session. This bill provides information to consumers about priority chemicals that may be harmful to children and that are in children's products. It does not regulate the use of those products, those chemicals. It does not phase them out. It does not do any of the things that the industry was concerned about last year. This is simply a reporting bill requiring the PCA to post the reports of those priority chemicals and as they are used in children's products and put them on the PCA's website. The industry pays for this. There will be a fiscal note that's currently being prepared. It's somewhere, I think, going to end up in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. And Madam Chair, I appreciate the committee's time to address this issue and to provide for the cost of this consumer empowering legislation. And Madam Chair, I do have one testifier in support of the bill. Her name is Meredith Salmi from St. Louis Park, and she will talk about the consumer benefits of this approach.
Welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair, good morning. My name is Meredith Salmi Vidalik, and my husband Tom and I live in St. Louis Park, and we are really proud parents of our daughter Ada, who is nearly 2 years old. As any parent can attest, toddlers are pretty great at getting into and climbing on just about everything. My day is spent keeping Ada safe and out of harm, and protecting Ada is a job I take very seriously. Unfortunately, there's a lot in our home that I can't keep Ada safe from, things that until recently wouldn't have even crossed my mind. Things like formaldehyde in her bubble bath, toxic flame retardant in her favorite toddler-sized chair, or bisphenol A in her food containers. Like most parents, when I first discovered that these chemicals are in products I buy for my young child, I thought that's crazy. There isn't some agency checking, double-checking, or triple-checking the chemicals children are exposed to on a daily basis. And what shocked me is that really no one is checking. As a parent, I do my best to buy products that will stimulate Ada's development and help her grow. However, these very same products could contain chemicals that have a profound effect on her health and development, effects such as cancer, autism, or reproductive harm. That's really scary to me. So with every new children's product my husband and I need to buy, it seems I have to do a research project to find the safest option. I feel like I need to be a chemist to know for certain if a product doesn't contain formaldehyde, bisphenol A, or a whole host of other chemicals harmful to my daughter. As a busy mom, I can only do so much. I am asking you to help me keep my daughter Ada safe from these toxic chemicals. Minnesota needs a comprehensive policy like the Toxic Free Kids Act that will allow us parents to know if some of the most harmful chemicals are lurking in the products we use for our children each and every day. Please help protect Minnesota's kids like Ada, respond to us parents, and support the Toxic Free Kids Act. Thank you.
Questions for the testifier? I don't see any questions. Thank you so much. Representative Winkler, would you like to go over the bill, just the amendment a little bit more, and then we will hear from anybody in the audience who would like to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I mentioned, the Department of Health determines what are the 9 priority chemicals which are known through research to have an impact on health, specifically children's health. The 9 chemicals currently are BPA, cadmium, lead, formaldehyde, phthalates, 3 different versions of those, and 2 toxic flame retardants. The first step in this legislation is that manufacturers have to provide initial notification to the PCA about whether those 9 priority chemicals are in children's products. 2 years later, they have to submit a full report with detailed information that goes down to the individual product level. Again, it doesn't have to be labeled on the product as it's sold. It simply has to be reported. Step 3, 2 years after the first report, the second report is due, requiring them to notify whether they're still using those priority chemicals. And step 4 is, and thereafter, is every 2 years they have to continue to report on whether their products contain those chemicals. I think the industry will talk about how the state of Washington has a similar program of reporting and that they would like to model their program exactly on Washington State. But I think Minnesota's program actually will work quite well for Minnesota and without causing the necessity of our tying our state law to another state's reporting laws. Since last session, as I mentioned, Madam Chair, and as represented in this DE amendment, we have made significant changes to this bill as compared to last year, which actually required a phase-out of those 9 priority chemicals over time in their use in various products. So I guess I would just reiterate, Madam Chair, this is reporting, this is for children's products, and the model for this is based on another state that is already doing this. So I think that national manufacturers already basically know how to do this and will be able to comply with Minnesota's reporting structure and give consumers the power they need to make good decisions.
Thank you, Representative Winkler. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to testify? We had Andy Hackman signed up from the toy industry, if you'd like to go first. I don't see him here. Tony Cuelas from the Minnesota Chamber signed up.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tony Cuelas. I'm the Director of Environmental Policy at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Hackman is in a cab, I'm sure, that is speeding towards this building, so I will try and be very slow. and allow him time to arrive, Madam Chair. But the Chamber of Commerce, as you can imagine, has some concerns about House File 605. Madam Chair, we believe that a state-by-state, chemical-by-chemical approach tends to be very difficult to implement and could result in contradictory and confusing requirements for manufacturers and retailers in the state. As Representative Winkler is alluded to, children's products are heavily regulated by the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act as well as at the EPA. And hopefully if Mr. Hackman makes it here, he can talk specifically about how toys, and there are other, besides the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act and the EPA, there are a number of other regulations on the federal level that the toy industry itself has to meet. And also in Minnesota, as Representative Winkler has pointed out, our chemicals of high concern through the Department of Health are what give us regulatory oversight here in the state. I've said this before, Madam Chair, and I'm going to say it again for the record. Last year when we talked about BPA and formaldehyde, I made reference to TSCA, the Toxic Substances Control Act, and the Chamber is very supportive of the review and update of that federal law. I think it's 1976 is when it was in inception, and it needs to be updated, and we are very supportive of that. And I wanted to get that on the record, Madam Chair. But I think to get through some of the points that I'd just like to make, the bill itself, we think, is very duplicative. There's an extensive amount of data available, and I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. And you heard the Pollution Control Agency testify specifically on Representative Hansen's microbeads bill, that we don't want to go through and take duplicative information that's readily available to the agency and have to go through and, as I said, reinvent the wheel. They wanted to go through and look at the state of New York and do a literature review there. And we think that would be good. And I'll tell you that, as Representative Winkler referenced, Washington State is out there right now. Maine, California, Vermont, Oregon are just some of the states that have readily available information on children's products. That is all gathered under an association called the Interstate Chemical Clearinghouse, or IC2, that's run by the Northeast Waste Management Officials Association. And their goal is to avoid duplication and enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of state, local, tribal initiatives through collaboration and coordination. There's 11 states that are a member of the Interstate Clearinghouse, and Minnesota has 2 representatives on that clearinghouse through the Pollution Control Agency and the Minnesota Department of Health. They have an extensive website that I was on last night, Madam Chair, and it was pretty impressive because you can go through and search by state, you can go through and search by region, by status of a chemical, by an individual chemical, by policy category, product types, years that they were regulated. There's over 1,000 state and local policies from 50 states starting in 1990 until now. And that data is all in that IC2 website. And I encourage you to visit that if you get a chance. To talk about the confusing part that I think that is confusing to retailers and manufacturers, I just want to draw your attention to the exemption section of the amendment and the bill that Representative Winkler has before you. In Oregon and Washington alone, there are 17 exemptions. There are 13 exemptions in ours. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is we take away one of them. And one of them is a food and beverage exemption. Now, Washington, in their 17, has a number of ones that we include, including batteries, but they also have bicycles, toy steam engines, BB guns, pellet guns, snow sporting equipment, including skis, poles, boots, snowboards and bindings, roller skates, hockey helmets. Oregon also has darts with metallic points. And in a shout out to my colleagues who represent the slings and catapult industry, they must be doing their jobs in Oregon and Washington because slings and catapults are exempted for this chemical regulation in Oregon and Washington. And to tell you how confusing that would be, so if you sold a hockey helmet in Minnesota, you would have to register it. If you sold a hockey helmet in Oregon or Washington, you wouldn't have to register it. And also in the food and beverage definition, that we're taking away that exemption, there is no food and beverage definition in the definition section of this amendment or in that bill. So that leads to some confusion among the industry, and I just wanted to point that out to the committee, Madam Chair. If Mr. Hackman hopefully makes it, he will testify that... He did make it, perfect. Andy will be able to testify on the cost to the industry and what it costs them alone just in Washington to comply with Washington State, and also what it costs state agencies, regulatory agencies, to perform these data searches that are going on. So we just wanted to point that out, that how costly it is. And then, Madam Chair, the worry is not the worry, but when you talk about chemical regulation, data, exposure, dose are key to when you talk about those chemicals. And I just wanted to point out, we talked about, Representative Winkler referenced the state of Washington and their, what do I want to call it, their safe products, here it is right here, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Children's Safe Products Act, under their Department of Ecology, under the state of Washington. Right on their page where they publish their data, there's a number of bullet points before you go into it, and I'm going to read to you about them and why there's concern about what we do when we go through and talk about data and exposure. And it's, the first bullet point is, the presence of a chemical in a children's product does not necessarily mean that the product is harmful to human health or that there is any violation of existing safety standards or laws. The second bullet point says, the report triggers are not based on health-based values. And the third one is that this data should not be used to determine the safety of individual products. That's right from the Department of Ecology at the state of Washington. And before you go in and look at their data, those are the 3 bullet points on their website. Madam Chair, I just wanted to make those points to the committee and also let you know that there was, 3 years ago, started by the Environmental Initiative, a stakeholder group that involved the University of Minnesota, the business community, environmental organizations, and state agencies to try and reach a consensus on how to approach chemical regulation in this state. We thought we could reach a consensus. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we were active participants in that, and we would love to see the Environmental Initiative activate that stakeholder group again to address just some of these issues that Representative Winkler has in his amendment. With that, Madam Chair, I'd stand for any questions.
I don't see any questions, but Mr. Hackman is here right now, and so I think it would be good to bring him down. Oh, did you have a question, Representative Hamilton?
Well, I think so, Madam Chair, and maybe the next testifier can help out. You know, Ada is absolutely beautiful, and it's fun to see, children here as well. And so every single one of us want to do the right thing and make sure that, the children are protected. I have 2 kids of my own, right? We want to do the right thing. Help us understand, whether it's the author or the testifier or the next one, help us understand what a product has to go through in order for it to be cleared and safe and being sold into the market, if you could, please.
I think that would be a good question for the next testifier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. I apologize for being a little bit late this morning, had a little bit of weather. But again, my name is Andy Hackman. I'm here on behalf of the Toy Industry Association. We represent all the makers, producers, manufacturers of toys. We have over 700 members and about 125 companies located here in the state of Minnesota. As the National Association for the Toy Industry, we represent across all interests and across all of our product categories. We certainly reflect and support the sort of concept that we want to make safety our #1 priority. It truly is what makes a company start in the toy industry is to bring joy and to bring a safe product to children. And we've been able over the last several years to do a lot in terms of making safety mandatory federal law. I'll talk to you a little bit about how toys are regulated at the federal level and then focus in more specifically on House File 605. But the toy industry is regulated by 6 different federal standards
and statutes. And what's unique about us is, under the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act that was passed in 2008, our federal toy safety standard was made mandatory federal law. And what's unique about that is we're able to look at and address new science as it comes on board. I think cadmium was an issue that Minnesota dealt with about 3 years ago. The toy industry was able to create a stringent standard, put that in place in our toy safety standard federally before we had to deal with federal or state regulation, because we have preemptive federal power under our toy safety standard. It's a dynamic process. It relies on medical doctors, experts with the Consumer Product Safety Commission and consumer advocates, and allows us to take into account new information about chemicals and materials and make our standard at the federal level the most stringent as possible. So certainly we echo and have the same goal of this legislation, to make sure that toys are as safe as possible for my daughter, who's 5, and for everybody else's kids. I think some of the challenges with this legislation specifically are how it differs from other states, and how the reporting would be quite unique here if this is implemented as it's proposed and as the proposed amendment looks at this. You heard a lot about the state of Washington. Washington created their Children's Safe Products Act. It was passed in 2008, and reports began to be filed in August of last year. To give you some perspective, they went through about a 3-year rulemaking process. That industry was at the table. It was a fair process, but there certainly was some significant investment that went into that effort on behalf of industry. It cost us, and not by our own estimates, but by the state's estimates, $27.6 million just in testing costs to comply with the reporting requirements that exist in Washington State. And I think some of the concerns that you heard from Mr. Quillis and that we have with this legislation are significant differences that will require testing to be duplicative at this point. To test for certain chemicals, it's $2,000 to $5,000 per chemical per product. And while companies like Lego and Hasbro and Mattel may be able to absorb some of that cost, it truly is the smaller companies that have 3 or 4 employees that are just looking to bring a product to market that can be quite challenging. So as we look at the legislation, those differences mean a lot. And they mean a lot to our retail partners who say to us, we need to sell a product that's uniform in all 50 states. Show us the testing reports, show us the legal documentation for how the product complies in Washington State, in Minnesota, in California, in Maine, and the states that are taking action on this. So certainly, as you look at this legislation, we hope that you consider some of the differences that are in place, and for us to get to a point where there wouldn't be duplicative costs that quite frankly don't improve safety. I mean, we will do anything we can and spend any resource that we can if it's improving safety. As Mr. Koulis noted, the Washington State program notes the fact that the mere presence doesn't equate to harm, and that's something that we think the committee should also weigh as you consider this legislation is, are we improving public health? Are we protecting kids with this? And are we arming consumers with truly meaningful information? And we think right now this certainly is a data development exercise, but we want it to be something that supports safety. So because of the differences and because of some significant provisions in here that make this a new program, it would certainly be a first-in-the-nation program if it's linked to the GPC codes as proposed in this legislation. We think that there needs to be some significant work done with the language in addition. And we certainly are willing to work with the committee and work with the Chamber and the Department to come to some ideas that may accomplish the goal. But certainly, if the state's looking just to have this data, to be quite frank, it exists on the Washington State's Department of Ecology website. You don't necessarily have to pass a new law to have that information. The Washington State Department of Ecology invested a lot of effort and time in this process, and unless we're going to just specifically duplicate that, we're going to have to reinvent the wheel here. So that's, I think, is our interest in this legislation. We certainly, again, want to do everything we can to protect kids because, as a dad myself, this is an industry I'm proud to represent. And truly, I couldn't go to bed and sleep well at night if I felt like this industry wasn't doing the right thing and wasn't thinking every day about ways to protect kids and ways to make that mandatory across all products, not just for the companies that are leaders, but to make sure that everybody's at the same playing field. So, again, I'm sorry to have been a little bit late this morning. Certainly can answer any questions about how the toy industry has been engaged in these efforts in a number of states and the potential impacts of the legislation before you today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I didn't see any questions. Kelsley Johnson from the grocery manufacturers.
You got Representative Benson.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed this. Representative, start with you and then Representative Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Winkler, and this kind of relates to both Mr. Quillis and the toy industry's question. Is there anything in your bill that prohibits the website from having the qualifying cautionary statements that they referenced that are in the Washington?
Madam Chair, Representative Hansen, no, it doesn't limit that. And I think it's important to listen carefully to the testimony. Two things that you did not hear either of the testifiers so far say, and that is that, number one, the 9 priority chemicals are safe for children. They didn't say that. And they also didn't say that consumers are able to easily access that information in Minnesota to understand which products that they might buy would have those chemicals in them. And so you can have a disclaimer on the website, but the idea here is to actually give meaningful information on chemicals that the Department of Health determines may have an impact on children's health and make that information available to consumers in a simple, straightforward manner. And those are two things that this bill does that we would not have without it.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Testifier, I heard you say, I thought, two contradictory things. One, you said that the information is all readily available, and then you also said that this regulation that Representative Winkler is proposing here is onerous. Which is it?
If you are looking for information about chemicals, and the Washington State list includes all the 9 chemicals that have been prioritized here in Minnesota, that information exists in Washington State. You don't have to create a law. You don't have to pass a law to find where those products have been reported in Washington State. The department could simply link to that website. No additional cost, no regulation, no creation of a new program, no new testing that would be resulted from the retail community to say to us, show me that you're complying with Minnesota's law. So that exists. That information exists. If we create a wholly new program that's based off of GPC codes, which is different than how Washington State does it, that's going to result in that second round of testing costs. That $27 million that the industry spent in Washington State will have to be duplicated if it's different here in Minnesota. So that's where perhaps that disconnect is. But again, the information exists in terms of getting an idea of where these materials are located in children's products. And part of the challenge here is for a company, you're proving the negative. You're testing for 9 chemicals or 66 chemicals or 59 chemicals to explain to the retailer, no, it's not in here. So you're spending that $2,000 to $5,000 per product, per chemical, and you're proving a negative, which I think is some of the frustration here is that it is not improving safety. It's not an investment that improves the safety of children's products. So that's why we're cautious about creating a new program that doesn't improve our product profile, doesn't create new information, but just runs it through a different format, quite frankly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, you know, America's kind of unique, isn't it, in the sense that chemical companies are allowed to introduce chemicals into the environment, whereas, for example, the European Union requires chemical companies to prove there's no harm. Would you support such legislation?
Madam Chair, Representative, we have been an active part of the effort at the federal level to revise TSCA. The REACH program in Europe that you're referencing is a continental program, a large-scale national program at requiring additional data for chemicals. We have been an active member of the efforts to reform TSCA at the federal level. I think you heard it referenced earlier. There's a Senate bill that has 25 bipartisan co-sponsors. It has the broadest bipartisan co-sponsorship of any bill in the U.S. Senate right now, and we've been supporting that effort. And I certainly respect, as we go and deal with this issue from state to state, that states want to be more protective and want to move farther and want the federal government to set the floor, not the ceiling. So I certainly respect that and understand the interest there. But to create sort of the framework that you're talking about that creates new data and significantly looks at the safety of chemicals, we support that effort. We've been supporting it at the federal level, and to do it right, you need the resources we would suggest that the resources of EPA, just as the resources of ECHA in Europe were brought to bear to create that program. So again, just long story to a short question, I apologize, but we've been supportive of that effort through TSCA reform, absolutely.
Madam Chair, just a quick, I'm just wondering if your trade organization is actively lobbying for federal legislation. And, if Representative of the Chamber of Commerce were here, I would ask the same question, because usually we do not see industrial organizations working hard to increase federal government oversight of their activities. So I'm surprised that the Chamber now is working so hard at the federal level. It's kind of unusual. Usually they're talking about responsibility to state levels. So your organization is kind of an outlier then?
Madam Chair, Representative, the effort at the federal level is unique. I testified in front of the Senate in Senator Barbara Boxer's Committee on Environment and Public Works in July in support of the effort that's going on at the federal level right now. There are about 176 trades that are supporting TSCA reform federally. And you have in the House as well a bill draft from House Republicans that give EPA new authority and potential for new resources. I hate to say I've been in this policy area for 13, 14 years now, and it probably is the best opportunity that I've seen ever getting TSCA reform done federally. So certainly I wouldn't say TIA is an outlier in that effort. There's a strong effort at the federal level. Understand the interest to make sure that Minnesotans are protected as well, and understand why this committee is interested in the issue.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you try to become as educated on an issue as you possibly can, right, before you vote and whatnot, and find that balance between the emotional aspect and the science and the research and aspect as well. And my question, I guess, would be to you, Representative Winkler. The chemicals that we're talking about, if they're deemed unsafe and the Department of Health deem these chemicals as toxic to children, why then are they cleared to be used in toys?
Madam Chair, Representative Hamilton, I think what we're talking about here is the fact that TSCA has not been reformed in the last 14 years. And just because certain chemicals may be regulated with respect to toys or certain types of toys, it doesn't mean that they're regulated with respect to all products that children may come in contact with. For example, cadmium is regulated in children's jewelry, but it's also in clothing, booster seats, shoes. I mean, there are lots of products that children get access to that are not just toys, and there is no comprehensive federal regulation that addresses these priority chemicals in children's products. The only way you can do that right now is a state-by-state effort, and I'm sure we're all Federalists, Representative Hamilton. We think that if the federal government doesn't lead, it's time for the states to do that. I do recall hearing something about that in recent years. It seems to me that this is a good step forward for Minnesota, and if enough states step up, it may create some burden for the industry in the sense that different states might have different standards, but typically it's when that happens, when there's a patchwork approach to regulation, that the federal government finally does act and take a comprehensive role in regulating these kinds of things. If the states don't lead, after 14 years, it's pretty clear that the federal government isn't ready to get going on that either.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to a question that was asked earlier. I didn't really hear an answer to it. Representative Benson asked whether or not you support what's called the precautionary principle, which is it's not the burden of industry to prove that a chemical component is safe before it is used. That's what exists in the European Union. That's what exists in some other countries. My understanding is organizations like yours have usually opposed that. You may want TSCA reform, but I don't know what your idea of TSCA reform is. Do you support, my question is, do you support the precautionary principle? In other words, not using chemicals in your products until they are proven safe, rather than waiting for, the public to have the ill effects and then going back?
Madam Chair, Representative, we support looking at exposure and hazard as we approach safety in our products. So looking at the potential for a child to be exposed to anything, and we put in place the most protective standards as possible. The precautionary principle certainly sounds good on paper, but we wouldn't get in our car every day if we were trying to eliminate all risk. We wouldn't be able to pump gas because there's some risk there. So an absolute vision of the precautionary principle where you're trying to eliminate all risks sends you off in very challenging directions. So we truly look at safety as our number one priority, looking at all exposures to all materials in our product categories, and the potential hazard from those materials. So that's how we approach safety, and in terms of the precautionary principle, there's a lot of sort of perspective on how that could be applied. But using an absolute precautionary principle approach is not realistic, in our opinion.
Representative Clark.
Madam Chair, sir, I didn't mention anything about absolute. That came from you. I'm asking about whether or not you support the precautionary principle, which is very reasonable. It's not crazy. It's very reasonable that many of our other countries use. So please don't say that those are my words. I'm talking about the fact, for example, I think it's something like only 200 of the 80,000 synthetic chemicals that we use today have any sort of testing in this country. Whereas in other countries, the burden for proving that those 80,000 chemicals that could be used, before they can be used, precautionary principle means that you look at the very things that you were mentioning, you look at risk and so on. So we don't have to be extreme. We have to talk about what's already being used in other countries. They seem to have a fairly, healthy economy. I just am asking whether your industry and the associations you belong to support that, and I haven't really heard you say anything except an extreme position. So should I take it that you do not support the precautionary principle as used by the European Union and other countries?
Madam Chair, Representative, in terms the precautionary principle as used in Europe is applied at a national level, and is applied in terms of presenting data to prove safety. We've supported the development of more data. Again, we don't make the chemicals. The toy industry does not make chemicals. We make products. So the more data that's available for us to make smart decisions about our products, we support that. I can't speak on behalf of every chemical in every industry sector in terms of that. But as it pertains to us, we support a national approach that creates more information, and that's why we've been strongly supporting the TSCA effort. In terms of the European Union, we sell products in the European Union. We rely on data from the EU in terms of developing standards for our industry. The standards between the U.S. and Europe for toys are very much in alignment. So in terms of that perspective, we work within both systems and do so supportively.
Thank you for your testimony. We have Kelsey Johnson from the Grocery Manufacturers Association, who is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Johnson, and I am Director of State Affairs for the Grocery Manufacturers Association. GMA is the voice of more than 300 leading food, beverage, and consumer product companies that sustain and enhance the quality of life for hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. and around the globe. Founded in 1908, GMA is an active, vocal advocate for its member companies and a trusted source of information about the industry and the products consumers rely on and enjoy every day. The association and its member companies are committed to meeting the needs of consumers through product innovation, responsible business practices, and effective public policy solutions developed through a genuine partnership with policymakers and other stakeholders. In keeping with its founding principles, GMA helps its members produce safe products through a strong, ongoing commitment to scientific research, testing, and evaluation, and to providing consumers with the products, tools, and information they need to achieve a healthy diet and an active lifestyle. The food, beverage, and consumer packaged goods industry in the United States generates sales of $2.1 trillion annually, employs 14 million workers, and contributes $1 trillion in added value to the economy every year. Our concern with House File 605 is that it adds new, unnecessary regulation to the sale of food, beverage, and consumer products that will confuse consumers, likely increase their grocery costs, and limit their choices. The food, beverage, and consumer products industry annually produce 15,000 new products. There are currently 300,000 food, beverage, and consumer products on the market. A large percentage of these products would require review by the MPCA according to this legislation. This legislation will be costly and difficult to comply with. One concern we have is in the amendment is to Section 5, Minnesota Statutes 2012, Statute 116.9405 under the exemptions, the removal from exemption. Number 9, food and food or beverage packaging, except a container containing baby food or infant formula. No other state includes food or beverages. Our association recognizes the need for changes and has worked diligently to reduce the amount and use of priority chemicals within the food, beverage, and consumer products we manufacture. We also are strong advocates on the federal level for updating the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Toxic Substances Control Act. GMA supports strong federal food safety and chemical management systems. These are national issues, not limited to a single state. When a state does act, GMA supports a scientific, effective, risk-based approach. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify on behalf of this very important issue to our industry. I will stand for questions.
Representative Winkler, do you want to, I don't see questions. Would you like to make a final comment before I lay this bill on the table?
Madam Chair, it looks like
Lay it over for possible inclusion, not on the table. I'm sorry, I didn't see. You are hard to see. Representative Poppy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question. This kind of relates to the testifier. I guess why is that removed from this bill, that section? And maybe Representative Winkler has a response to that, I guess, on section number 9.
Madam Chair, Representative Poppy, I don't know why we would want to not give consumers information about food products, just like anything else. And so I don't know why that would be something that we would be concerned about, frankly. It just seems pretty straightforward. If you're consuming food and beverages and you're consuming anything else, the issues are the same. And again, this testifier did not say that the chemicals were safe and did not say that consumers had information readily available to make informed choices. And that's what this bill does.
Madam Chair. And then a follow-up, just on, which is a little bit different, but with regards to a federal approach, I just wanted to ask Ms. Johnson if there's support for a federal approach on this versus the state approach.
Yeah, we are actively lobbying at the federal level, Madam Chair, members. We are actively lobbying at the federal level for an update to TSCA, the Toxic Substances Control Act, and the Food Safety Modernization Act. We're one of the many associations that's lobbying on the federal level for that. Currently, our products are heavily regulated by the FDA and the EPA. The FDA actually recently did a study and review of BPA and did conclude that BPA was safe and effective in food products. BPA is one of the things that is most highly tested in the industry. It is it has the largest amount of data available, and that's why we continue to turn to it rather than using a product that we have little to no data or safety or understanding of. We would rather use the product that we have available to us at this time. The industry has taken a stance and moved some of its products away from BPA, and we are continuing to look for other avenues. However, at this point in time, this is the most effective product available on the market.
Madam Chair, I just would like to comment on Representative Poppy's question very quickly, which is, it seems shocking that it would take 14 years and no federal update when all these trade groups are so heavily lobbying for reform of TSCA. Call me cynical, but it seems like there must be just a little bit more to that story, or it wouldn't take that long to get there.
Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And when it comes to health, personal and otherwise, believe me, I take it very, very seriously. Is there anybody the author brought it up about these chemicals, and none of the testifiers weighed in on them whether or not they're safe or not. Is there anybody in the audience or from a department that could speak to that to help us out? That would be my question. Somebody from, the FDA or whatever the case may be. Is there a testifier that could speak to this and answer my question as well? If, in the event, and I'm trying to become educated on this, right, and understand it. I mean, if they are dangerous that we continue to hear, why are they allowed to be used to, in food containers? Why are they being allowed in children's toys and stuff? Can we hear from somebody from one of the various departments to answer that question for me, please?
It's a little hard for me to listen to that question when there is, for somebody to come up and tell us that lead is dangerous for children. Lead is dangerous for children.
Oh, Madam Chair, please.
It is.
Madam Chair, we're talking about a number of...
There are 9 priority chemicals here, and cadmium was the second one. I think the science is drop dead that it is dangerous for children.
Well, then, Madam Chair, I don't think my question's out of line then. I want to hear from, whether it's the FDA or whomever. And I'm not a scientist. I'm a legislator trying to take a reasonable approach here and seek that balance. And I think it would be extremely helpful to understand, is there a level that is acceptable? And if so, what is that level? And if no level is acceptable, why on God's green earth are they being used? I think it's a legitimate question.
Representative Winkler, do you have somebody that you would like to call to answer that question? I think that is this is not a regulatory bill, but a notification bill. Do you have somebody who can respond? I don't want to get into the regulation part because this is not a regulation bill. This is a notification bill.
Madam Chair, Representative Hamilton, I don't know if there's somebody here from the Department of Health or not. I can tell you that it's the Department of Health that makes the determination about what chemicals are on the list or not. So there is, and I think, a fairly well-respected state agency in Minnesota who's looking at that based on science, not based on pseudoscience or suspicion. So it is based on science. They have to make that list. And this bill, in its regulatory state, before it became a reporting bill, went through the Health Policy Committee, and a number of those issues were addressed, as well as the consumer issues were addressed in the Commerce Committee, and the industry issues were addressed in the Commerce Committee when it was a regulatory bill, and it still moved through. So to the extent that that's a concern, I think we can go back and try to get some information to you, and maybe we can talk to the members of that committee that passed a far more stringent bill. And I don't think health is here, but I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about their opinions about safety levels.
Representative Hamilton, maybe it would clarify the situation. I mean, this is a finance committee, and as I understand it, this list has already been developed by the Department of Health. This is not a new list you're bringing to us. This is a list that has been developed. Am I correct about that?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
And there are 9 chemicals on that list. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. I feel like I'm being deposed.
Well, I think it's just important for us to have a sense of what's really about here. This part of the bill has already been taken care of.
And to that point, Madam Chair?
Yeah, just this piece of the puzzle has already been put in place. This piece of the puzzle is not going to be taken apart by this committee because the health department's already made that determination. So I think we will limit now questions to going forward and financing, but yes, you may respond. I have Representative McNamara, Erickson, and we're going to lay the bill over. So yes, Representative Hamilton.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Winkler, as well. I was a little confused when this bill was brought forward. I didn't understand all the committees that it had been through, so thank you for that clarification as well.
Is there somebody here who would like to say something? I don't know who you are.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tom Hogan. I'm the Division Director for Environmental Health with the Health Department, and I'm just really going to confirm what Representative Winkler just kind of described, that through a process of evaluating high-volume chemicals and identifying those that kind of rose to the top as far as most hazardous, and the amount of information and data, scientific data that was available as far as potential concerns for children. These 9 chemicals were identified through that process. And that's what we're working with at this time. We are also looking at developing a more thorough process for reviewing additional chemicals that may be added to the list in the future. As far as, why these chemicals may be used in current products, that I can't answer.
Okay, Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is not for either the testifier or Representative Winkler. I don't know what Representative Erickson has, but if it's a question for the testifier, do you want me to go next?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend the motion. I'd like to send House File 605 to the General Register and ask for a roll call.
You may do that, but there is a cost to this bill, so it cannot go to the General Register. We are carrying, there is a cost to this bill. It cannot go to the General Register, but there is a roll call. Clerk will take the roll. Chair votes no.
Wagenius, no. Falk?
No.
McNamara?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Benson?
No.
Bly?
No.
Clark?
No.
Dill? Absent. Erickson?
No.
Fabian?
Yes.
Freiberg?
No.
Hackbarth, excused. Hamilton?
Yes.
Hanson?
No.
Kahn?
No.
Keel?
Yes.
Poppy?
No.
Torkelson?
Yes.
Ward?
No.
There being 11 nays and 6 ayes, the motion does not carry. Representative Erickson, you have the last. No comments?
Madam Chair?
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me how much the appropriation is in this bill that your people all voted no on? They voted no to send House File 605 to the General Register because I think you said there's an appropriation in it. How much is the appropriation in the bill, Representative Winkler?
Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, the fiscal note is currently being prepared, and the PCA in informal conversation suggests the numbers between $300,000 and $400,000.
Representative Winkler, I'm not a lawyer, Madam Chair. I'm not. I'm a landscaper. The appropriation audience is 0. There is no appropriation in this bill. It is 0. The Democrats unanimously voted to not move this bill forward. Thank you, Representative Winkler. We know the priorities. It's all about partisan politics and not about policy. Welcome to the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think for clarification to the record, we do have a specific number that we are carrying that is 335, and we have tails numbers, and as this amendment is made to the omnibus bill, we will have very specific numbers that will pay for it, and there's room for those numbers. With that, The chair will lay this over for possible inclusion. Representative Winkler, we thank you for coming, and we're going to now substitute.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative.
But then this. Right.
Members, this is the omnibus bill that I am going to move for your consideration. It is House File 3158, and we posted it earlier as the vehicle for moving this bill, the omnibus bill, through to Ways and Means. So I'm going to move House File 3158 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, and the amendment is in your packet, and I will go over it very quickly for you.
Okay, Representative Wagenius moves that House File 3158 be re-referred to the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay,
that motion is before us.
There are 2 articles in the bill, and the Article 1 shows that the total...
Representative Wagenius, would you like to move the DE1 amendment to get the bill in the shape?
Oh, yes, thank you. There is a technical amendment.
Well, we first have to adopt the DE1 amendment, then we can move to the technical, but...
Fine.
So, Representative Wagenius moves the DE1 amendment to House File 3158. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Wagenius to the technical amendment.
The technical amendment is just that, and I would move it.
Thank you, members. I believe that is coded the A10 amendment. Representative Wagenius moves the A10 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Wagenius to the bill as you prefer it.
Thank you. You will see on the first page the total of the dollars that are proposed to be expended in this amendment that we have adopted. If you would go to the page 2, you will see the Department of Agriculture. This is something we've already voted on, but for ease of administration, I put it in the bill. It's the money to Second Harvest Heartland. In addition, on line 2.28, there is $100,000 to compensate experts evaluating the death of pollinators. And we heard that bill from Representative Hansen. 310 in 2015 is to administer the dog and cat licensing and inspection program. Representative Hamilton, we adopted exactly what came from committee. There is no change here in the dollar or in the wording. The wording we'll see later. You'll see on the next page that we have, we're carrying a base in fiscal year 2016 and a base in 2015. Next to the Pollution Control Agency are 2 things. One is $1,000 to compile information on plastic microbeads and their potential impact on aquatic ecosystems and human health. That's $1,000. That was brought to you by Representative Hansen. Next is $7 million for the purposes, and we'll go over it later. These are the SCORE dollars, and if you'll remember the bill that Representative Hornstein brought to you and we discussed, he was carrying $22 million to fully take the money out of the general fund. Obviously, we didn't have that much money. We have $7 million and $7 million in the base going forward, and the way we are expending that is that for the metropolitan counties, the 7-county metro area, there are, it will be 50% of the money will be going to composting, and the rest to meet the 75 standard. And for going to the rest of the state, it will go just as the money has always gone. There is no change. The formula will be the formula. In the next part is 4.4. We're sending money to Parks and Trails for a one-time appropriation, and that is basically to do deferred maintenance. Of course, we've had trouble with that in Parks and Trails. We've discussed that on occasion in this committee. This is not the kind of deferred maintenance we talk about when we are doing bonding bills. It's more like the toilet cracked and you have to replace the toilet, or a branch fell onto a roof and you're not replacing the roof for the whole, you're not redoing the whole roof, but you're replacing a half dozen shingles. It's a kind of thing that for those of us on the committee who are homeowners, we face all the time. There is additional money going to Parks and Trails from the Lottery in Lieu account. There was a substantial amount of money there. This still leaves some money on the bottom line for Parks and Trails. You will see down on line 4.424, we're doing the similar thing in the metropolitan area where there's quite a bit of money on the bottom line. Back up to 4.19 is from the Game and Fish Fund for trap shooting sports facility grants, brought to you by Representative Dill. On line 4.24 is the money for the University of Minnesota for the invasive terrestrial plants center, brought to you by Representative Falk. There are three parts of money to fund that. 5.1 from the general fund, $490,000 is from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. This was money left on the bottom line and not spent this year by the trust in that bill that is now on the House floor. And then $970,000 is from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. This is a transfer, so it's not included in the total up at the top. It is a transfer from dollars that were sent back from Bowser with a letter to the folks at LCCMR saying this was money they would not be spending. So now we're in Article 2, and this is the language that goes along with the appropriations. The language starting on page 6 is for the dog and cat bill that we referenced before. There is no change in the language as that came to us from Representative Poppy's committee. The pollinator bill from Representative Hansen is on starts on line 6.14, and that continues on to page 10. That's where we have Representative Dill's bill, 10.22. The recycling is on 10.30, and if you would look at the language where we changed it from Representative Hornstein's bill, you will look on lines 13.18, and that's how we distribute the money that I've already described to you. Back on page 1422, Representative Hamilton is the rest of the dog and cat bill. That continues then we've all seen this language. It continues to down to page 22, when we have on page 22.21, we have Representative Benson's bill on school trust director. This is the exact language that Representative Benson gave to us. And then we go back again to line 3. There's a, you know how bills are done, there's some, we're back to some B language, but then we are on line 23.21, and this is the terrestrial plants and pest center that Representative Falk brought to you. And with that, that is the bill, and I'm ready for questions or amendments.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Seeing no questions, being that we've gone through all of these bills already, we've taken public testimony on them. Representative Wagenius, would you like to go to your first amendment?
The First Amendment is the, and I'm not sure I have it up here with me. Let me check.
I believe it's the A1 amendment, Representative Wagenius.
The A1 amendment, yes.
Representative Wagenius moves the A1 amendment.
And this is for the Toxic Free Kids Act, and you will see online, we certainly heard the testimony, but you will look on line 1.4, and you will see the costs, and there is room in our spreadsheet for those costs. There were tails, and there is room in our tails budget for the tails. And I would move this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Discussion to the A1 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Let's see, Representative Hansen, do you have the A2 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hansen moves the A2 amendment. Representative Hansen, to your amendment.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the A2 amendment is relating, it's a $50,000 study for the Lake Emily Dam in Crow Wing County to look at water clarity and water levels. This is an issue where some boards have been placed in the dam, a lot of public interest and concern, so trying to apply some science looking at the effects of the dam.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. Representative Wagenius, what's your pleasure with the A2 amendment?
I support the A2 amendment.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. Amendment is adopted. Let's see here. Representative Wagenius, do you have the A4 amendment?
I do have the A4 amendment. This is from the DNR. We are perhaps going to be developing the Fort Snelling Upper Bluff in the bonding bill, and they're just clarifying some language that says interest earned on the money in the account accrues to the account. And I would, and this would be for the Upper Bluffs.
Representative Wagenius moves the A4 amendment. Discussion of the A4 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Hansen, do you have the A8 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd move the A8 amendment.
Representative Hansen moves the A8 amendment. Representative Hansen, to your amendment.
Mr. Chair and members, the A8 amendment is relating to a study to look at recovering the historical native population of bobwhite quail. This has gone through the policy committee and generated a $9,000, I want to make sure it's $9,000 fiscal note. And so I think this is a good plan and has had good support.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. Representative Wagenius, what's your pleasure with the amendment?
Members, I support the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. Amendment is adopted. Representative Hanson, do you have the A7 amendment?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I'd move the A7 amendment.
Representative Hanson moves the A7 amendment. Representative Hanson, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. The A7 amendment, we had, in an original version of the spreadsheet, we had been carrying $65,000 in the tails for a bill that is not included, and so what this amendment does is applies the $65,000 in the tails to the pollinator response team of experts.
Thank you, Representative Hanson. Representative Wagenius, what's your pleasure with the amendment?
I believe we should adopt this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Discussion to the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails. Amendment is adopted. Members, the page is handing out the A13 amendment. Thank you. Is anybody here going to offer the A13 amendment? Representative McNamara, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm offering the A13 amendment.
Representative McNamara moves the A13 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would direct the previous RIM appropriation to stay in RIM, and the Terrestrial Invasive Species Center is just getting off the ground, and we're still looking to see how that'll be. And there's over $5 million appropriated in this bill for that center. So I would ask that this money stay in RIM. And, Mr. Chair, I'd ask for a roll call.
Representative McNamara requests a roll call. Representative Wagenius, to the amendment. What's your comment?
My first comment, members, would be that this is, I didn't know that this was Representative McNamara's amendment, but I would ask members to look at the date and the time that this amendment was drafted. It was drafted yesterday at 2 p.m., several hours before Representative McNamara went onto the floor and said he had no notice of the DE3 amendment, this bill, or that it had been posted.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't want to have the discussion again, but I'm more than welcome to. I think there's a number of students here that will be very interested in a little lesson today. Welcome and glad you're here. To go back, we were told last Thursday in this committee by Chair Wagenius that the bill would be worked on and be presented to us possibly late Friday night, but more likely we would receive it sometime on Saturday, and I asked the question as late as Saturday night, and she said that's a possibility. So if you can imagine, when I didn't receive the bill anytime over the weekend, I was very surprised. I actually cleared my emails down to I only had about 8 emails left in my email box. I was very proud. My inbox was very low. Unfortunately, never did I get the bill over the weekend. It was not sent to the Republican members. It was sent to all the Democrat members, and it was sent to something called listserv. Now, you are probably in 10th grade, maybe 11th. You probably would know how to go to a listserv, but it would help if somebody told you you needed to go to the listserv to get the bill. So I came, when I found out, when I was asked a question about the bill, I said, well, I haven't got the bill yet. And they said, oh, yeah, you did. It's been out since Friday night. I said, oh, really? So I went and talked to the committee administrator, and he acknowledged, oh, we sent it to the listserv and the Democrat members on the committee, but not the Republican members on the committee. At 11:30, I found that out. So I went down to the committee administrator and said, you know, it's 12:30 now. Maybe you could figure this out. He never sent us the bill yet. So I went up to Chair Wagenius' office. She was in an important meeting. So I let her legislative assistant know, you should probably let Chair Wagenius know you haven't sent the bills to us yet.
Representative McNamara.
So then I
didn't receive a copy either, so we're not going to go and rehash all the details. It serves
Mr.
no
Chair,
purpose.
you're interrupting me.
I know I am, because we're not going to go on a 10-minute soliloquy. We're going to continue to do work.
I didn't bring it up, Mr. Chair.
I didn't either, but I'm going to make sure that we continue to work.
Personal.
I didn't receive the email either, so we were directed, like everybody else, to look at the website. So you didn't get an email, I didn't get an email. you know what, it's in the past, it doesn't matter at this point, we're going forward, we're going to get our work done.
I didn't bring it up, Mr. Chair.
I didn't either, so let's go and be adults and leave it at that. Representative Wagenius to the amendment.
I did bring it up, and Representative McNamara, I think it is something that we will have to discuss again on the floor, since, but we will do that later.
I think it's most important for us to focus on the work at hand. Let's get to the amendment. Representative Wagenius
Okay.
to the amendment.
In this amendment, first of all, members, I think Representative McNamara, you were one that said we need to fund the terrestrial invasive species to the extent we possibly can on the record, and that's what we tried to do in this bill. And that's number one. Number two, there will be bonding money for RIM in our bonding bill. I think it's at $20 million. Representative Hansen probably knows that number. So, members, in this case, where we have a new opportunity to create a terrestrial invasive plant and pest center at the University of Minnesota, which will be cutting edge. I handed out this morning, I got an email from Bonnie Harper, who is one of the members of LCCMR. She was excited about this proposal, and I put that on your desks. So with that, members, I would ask you to vote no.
Roll call being requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Wagenius?
No.
Falk?
No.
McNamara?
Yes.
Anderson? Benson?
No.
Bly?
No.
Park?
No.
Dill?
Yes.
Erickson?
No.
Fabian?
Yes.
Freiberg?
No.
Hackbarth? Excused. Hamilton?
Yes.
Hanson?
No.
Kahn? No. Keel?
Yes.
Poppy? No. Torkelson?
Yes.
Ward?
No.
There being 7 ayes and 11 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. We have the A14 amendment. Who offers the A14 amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Representative Fabian, is that yours?
No, it is not my amendment. It's been brought to my attention that the audio is not going out.
Well, can the pages check on that, please? We've been informed that it's on, but we're not certain why. Is it? Well, they're going to check. Thank you. We've been informed that everything's running on our end, so there may be another technical issue on the other end. They're going to check with public info. We have the A14 amendment. Who offers the A14 amendment?
Mr. Chair, I am offering the A14 amendment, and I have some handouts.
Representative Torkelson offers the A14 amendment.
And I request a roll call, Mr. Chair.
Representative Torkelson has handouts.
I request a roll call, Mr. Chair.
Understood. Representative Torkelson requests a roll call.
I don't have a copy. Can I get it?
Can we get a copy to Representative Wagenius and then also to the rest of the committee? Representative Benson, do you have a
I
question?
do not have a copy either, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
they are being distributed. Actually, we've been informed that this is the first one that was handed out. You should have a copy of the A14 amendment. There, the supplementary information provided by Representative Torkelson is being handed out right now. Representative Torkelson, while the handouts are being distributed, would you like to walk us through the amendment?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. The A14 amendment deals with a project in Benton County that, if you've gotten your handout and you look on the first page, it deals with increasing irrigation efficiency, improving soil health, and maintaining critical stream flow, issues that we have been dealing with in this committee and that DNR is dealing with in relation to groundwater management areas and the irrigation issue. This project was heard by the LCCMR committee, did not make the first cut, and was brought up for reconsideration and failed by one vote. Since that time, I have been in contact with the proposers of the project. The original price tag on the project was $490,000. They've reduced the cost down to $397,000 and removed a couple of objectionable items in the project. The reason, I just found out yesterday there was a lot more money on the bottom line than I thought. I thought there was only $490,000 due to a project that was canceled by the Nature Conservancy. You see in today's proposed bill that there's some more funds there. I feel this is a very timely project, an important project, and you will note that the letter from the DNR has supported this project all along, and I think it's a proper use of LCCMR funds. It's been heard by the committee, unlike the terrestrial invasive species project, which has not been heard by the LCCMR committee.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Representative Wagenius, to the amendment.
Yes, members. I trust you all have noted the time that this was submitted. But I'm going to speak against this because this, while it may be wonderful for this one community, it is taking money away from the terrestrial plant and invasive species dollars that will benefit everyone in the state. If you will remember the way that bill was, the language is in here, and it is for terrestrial species, pests, and pathogens, for forests, prairies, wetlands, and the agriculture community. So it has broad reach, and I would hope that we would vote this amendment down because it is very narrow for one community, and while it does benefit this community, the money would be taken from something that will benefit the state and all members of the state.
Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Difference of opinion, I guess. We have really highlighted this session on pollinators, on irrigation, water quality, sustainability, and this amendment certainly fits the focus of the committee, and I would strongly support this amendment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Anderson. Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm recognizing the time that it was on the amendment, Mr. Chair, and I ask that I'm allowed to speak to that, since the author did bring it up. And Mr. Chair, and to the author of the bill, the wonderful staff that we do have around here, they did go on listserv, and they did what we directed them to do to address some of our concerns. They do not have the ability to see on listserv which members actually received it or were included in the emails as well. So I hope that we're not criticizing the wonderful people that we have around here in any way, shape, or form, because they do a great job. And to Representative McNamara's concerns, they're legit. And, you know, I just hope that we can recognize that, and in the future, make sure that everybody's included on that email as well, so that we can address the good work before us. Thank you.
Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, to the current point, you know, every meeting and every bill we've heard before this committee has been sent to me in an email. I depend on that email, especially when I'm not at the legislature. When I'm at home roaming around visiting with my constituents and trying to see if my family still recognizes me or not, I depend on my email for notification of important bills that come to this committee, and those emails were not sent out. And that is the point here. And
Representative Torkelson, it was announced that it would be on the website. We all heard that multiple times. We can continue to rehash the grievances that some people have about not being sent an email or, like everybody was told to check the website. That was stated multiple times.
Mr. Chair, I'm just pointing out that every other meeting and every other bill was sent to me on an email, and that's my only point. Thank you.
And Representative Torkelson, it was stated many times that it would be on the website. We have an amendment before us. Representative Torkelson, it is your amendment. Would you like the final word on the amendment before we vote?
I would like to speak to the amendment, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Representative Torkelson.
First, to the author. So increasing irrigation efficiency, improving soil health, and maintaining stream flow are only important to this one small area? Is that what you're trying to point out, Chair Wagenius?
Representative Wagenius and members, we are quickly approaching the end of our time here, so we will be voting on this before we are done. Representative Wagenius.
This community has asked for dollars to help with the project in this community. It may be a worthy project. I am not going to get into that. The question here is, should this money be spent for one local community, which LCCM, we won't even get into that, or should it be spent for something that will benefit many, many, many Minnesotans, because we're all concerned about a terrestrial invasive species, pests, and pathogens. And the bill that this would take money from is actually addressing invasive species that go into forests, invasive species that go into wetlands, invasive species that go into prairies, and invasive species that go onto agriculture land. Similarly with pests, similarly with pathogens. The broad application, I think, overwhelms this particular project. And so, members, I would ask you to vote no.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Torkelson, I know I've got a few other people on the list. We're going to get voted on this here in the next few minutes, so please make it as brief as possible. Representative Torkelson.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding we're coming back this evening. Yeah. And if this conversation needs to continue, I'd appreciate having adequate time to consider this project.
Representative Torkelson, if you'd like to withdraw the amendment now, we can vote on it later, and we'll just recess until the evening, if that's... Would you?
I withdraw the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Members, thank you. We've got a lot of work done here. We will be coming back tonight at 6 p.m., 400 North. It's a small room, unfortunately. If something else becomes available, we'll let you know by email as quickly as possible. Members, with that, we are in recess.